Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I hope that you are all good. My name's Amanda and in today's video we're going to be doing a Sims 4 speed build, and today we're going to be building a tiny home. We're going to be doing a tier 3 small home. So this does give us 100 tiles to use, and I was trying to maximize and use all 100, but I do believe I only end up using 97. It says 100 at the moment, but I think I make a few little tweaks and it ends up only being 97 tiles. But I did love how this one turned out. Now for this tiny home, I actually wanted to make it a family home. A lot of the time when I build tiny homes in The Sims 4, I tend to make them for either single parents or a couple or even single Sims living alone. I very rarely do them for families, so I thought that would be fun to do today. So this is going to be for 2 parents and 2 children. It is a 3-bedroom house, but the 3rd bedroom is kind of like an office musician space. We'll get to that we'll talk about more of that when we get to it. For the exterior, originally I kind of had a bit of a terraced house vibe in mind. This is a very large lot for the size of the house that we're building on, but I really wanted to build this one in sequoia because I wanted it to have a bit of a summery vibe. We've gone into summer here in the UK, so I thought that this would be a nice world to build in, and I quite like the lighting to build in on this lot as well. So that's why I've chosen this one, but it is a very large lot for the size of the house we're building, because obviously we're not going to go in and give them a very big back garden because it wouldn't have suited the style of house. Now for the exterior, I went in with a little bit of a yellow and blue theme, and then when we go inside I kind of add in lots of orange tones as well, because again I really wanted that summer vibe to come through in this build, and it was really fun to do. I did start off landscaping by placing down one of the palm trees, but then I felt as though it was going to be in my way when I was building the interior, so I did just move that or get rid of that, but we do actually place that down further along in the video. I kind of got most of the exterior done on this one and then just jumped inside, but then we come back outside and do the landscaping and the back garden further along in the video, as I felt as though it'd just be a little bit easier for this one. So moving on inside, now when it comes to placing down the stairs, I always like to position the stairs how I want them to be outside and then move them in, as I find this a lot easier. And then because it was only a small space, it was quite easy to do the floor plan. So we're going to have it so when you walk straight in, there's no hallway space. We're walking straight into the living room so that we can maximize the living space, and then the stairway is in the living room and then it goes up to a very small hallway that's upstairs. Now for this build and for a lot of tiny homes, especially when I'm trying to fit in a couple of Sims, I find it quite helpful to use a lot of the items from the tiny living pack. I just feel as though obviously they don't take up as much space. And one other thing is I really wanted to go for that kind of teal blue and yellows and oranges, and this pack just has some beautiful matching items for that. So as you can see, the cushions on the sofa match the doors on the TV cabinet perfectly, and then that kind of just set the theme for the inside of this build when it comes to those colors. I really like the orangey wood tones as well, so I pair a lot of the build items from Tiny Living in with Parenthood and the Dream Home Decorator pack as well, but I didn't necessarily do this as a pack restriction. I just felt as though I was gravitating toward a lot of the items for those packs for like the bulk of the furniture. Now the living room has come together quite quickly, although this was only a tiny space and I don't usually tend to overly clutter when I'm doing tiny spaces. I wanted this to have a very lived in, realistic family feel, so I do end up going in with a fair bit of clutter for this. Luckily I had no issues when it comes to play testing, but I really loved how this one turned out, and I definitely think I'm gonna create a family and use this in some of my own gameplay. I don't play The Sims very often. I predominantly build. Is my absolute favorite thing to do in The Sims, but I'm really wanting to maybe start some legacy challenges, so I thought maybe this would be a good family home for 1 or 2 of them that I have in mind. Now we've moved on from the living room. I did want to quickly mention that I loved the little board. I think it's from Parenthood with the pictures hanging on it. I think this looks amazing in those kind of realistic lived in family homes, because if you have children you'll know that they come home from school with so many different pictures and drawings, so it's really nice to have them hanging on the walls. Moving into the kitchen, I kept kind of like the blue theme for the walls, but I wanted to make sure we added in some tiled splash pack, and I reached for this one from Parenthood so much. I really hope that we get more of these kind of style splashbacks because I really like them. It'd be great if we could just get some splashbacks as well that you can use over the top of wallpaper or paint, if that makes sense, rather than having to cover the entire wall. But as you can see, the kitchen's now coming together. We've got our cabinets in. I love these ones. I love the orange wood tones. Like I mentioned, how well it works with the blue and the yellow. Now usually I go in with a lot of clutter in my kitchens, but I had to try and rein it in a little bit for this one. So I did use the tall cabinet because then that's already got clutter on it, so it gives that kind of storagey feel to it. And I wanted to make sure that I squeezed in this kitchen area a dining space so that there was enough seating for all 4 Sims. I did worry that this was going to be issues when it comes to play testing, but I didn't encounter any, so hopefully you don't if you do decide to download and play in this house. Speaking of downloading, it is already available on the Sims 4 gallery. I'll leave all the information in the description box below. I usually like in my kitchens also, especially when I'm doing family builds, to add in the washer and dryer and dishwashers and things like that, but there just wasn't enough space in this kitchen, which I think can be very realistic. Like not everyone lives in a large house. I know I certainly don't. I don't have room in my kitchen for a dishwasher, but I would love one. I do, however, in my own kitchen have a washer and tumble dryer, and that's in the UK a lot of the time. That's where we'll place down, but I know this isn't common around the world, so I did actually place down the washer and dryer in this build into the bathroom, which I actually much prefer. I wish I could have this set up in real life. So the bathroom is a little bit bigger than what I normally would do for a tiny home, but because I wanted to make sure that there was that space for the washer and dryer, I thought it made sense. Now I didn't place down a bath, but the 2 children I had in mind for this build are children anyway, so they can use the shower. So we've placed down the shower, and then we're just coming in and adding in a lot of the realistic clutter that you would find in a busy shared family bathroom. Like thinking of 4 Sims having to use this bathroom does stress me out a little bit, but I loved how it turned out. I love this pile of clothes that I've placed down near the wash basket. I believe it comes from the laundry day stuff pack, but I might actually be wrong there. But I love placing that down because if you've got children, they tend to be messy. The clothes don't always tend to go into the laundry basket. So it adds that really fun, realistic element. And that's why I love cluttering up my builds, because I feel as though you could make them look really realistic and lived in, which I know we don't want for every build, but I feel as though it really works for these family style builds. Moving on upstairs, I've kept the hallway paint or wallpaper the same as the downstairs living room because I felt as though that would flow. But then as we go into the parents' room, I opted for this more light neutral shade, and then we're going to add some colour in with things like the bedding and the clutter. Now this is only a small space, but I still think it was decently sized. So I used the cubes from a Dream Home Decorator to act as nice little bedside cabinets, and we're going to use the dressers from that pack as well, because then I felt as though it just all looked very matchy, and maybe when they moved in, they spent some time on making sure their bedroom looked nice. And I kind of went for a his and hers vibe over in this little bump out with the dressers. When it comes to cluttering them, we're going to put the dad's stuff on one side and the mum's stuff on the other. Now because the living space was only quite small, I did decide to add a TV in the bedroom here, so that the parents have a space that they can come and chill out and watch TV of an evening, or I don't know, maybe if they just need a break from the kids, there's a space there for them to come and relax. And then there wasn't much space to add much else on the floor, so I'm just going to come in and finish off by cluttering up. So we're going to add in I added some clothes in, actually a pile of clothes. It looks like the dad's not put away his clothes. They don't actually have a wardrobe, but they do have the 2 dressers, and that is also why I made use of the space above the bed with the cabinets, because this looks as though they could maybe use this for storing bedding or clothing that's not being worn and things like that. And then I went for the same lights pretty much in both of the bedrooms, and then just changed them up in the 3rd room, which, as I mentioned, is going to be like a little office space. But I tried to fit in as much as I could in here that would be like the parents' stuff, because there isn't a hallway really for any kind of storage. So I popped down the coat rack up here and the little bag hanger so that there's a space for those items. items. And then when it comes to the hallway, I kept that very simple. I didn't actually place down anything on the floor. We've just gone in obviously and added curtains, and then so that the wall didn't seem too bare, I added in the mirror and the wall lights. Now we're going to move on to the children's room. So I actually imagined that these were twins, and a lot of the time when I build a room for twins, I kind of make their interests opposite, but I actually imagined that these two twins have quite similar interests. They're both into creativity and some sport stuff, so I did pop down a football, and then we've got the little colouring activity table thing, and I kind of just went for a very matchy vibe, where usually I would kind of do opposites, so you can kind of tell which bed is one Sims and which bed is the others, but I just went for a little bit different, and I quite like how it turned out. I really loved the blue and yellow theme in here. I felt as though it just looked really fun, really colourful, and if I was a child, I'd love hanging out in this room. I wanted to make sure that there was like lots of posters on the walls, and that's why I kind of wanted to make it feel as though they have the same interests, so they're not necessarily arguing over this is mine and this is yours. They've got quite the same style. And I did also imagine them quite young Sims, maybe only just gone out of the toddler stage into the child stage, so they're not like necessarily into too much like gaming or computers and stuff like that. I have popped a tablet down for them, but I've kept everything else looking a little bit more childlike, which I quite liked for this build, because I just didn't imagine them. I imagined them being like, I don't know, 5-6 years old. So then I'm just coming in and adding some decorative items in and night lights and things like that, just to make it feel a little bit more young. I loved how this rug looked, by the way. I had to mention that. I struggled a little bit with picking rugs for some of the rooms in this build, and then I don't even know if I've used that black and white check swatch of that particular rug, but I loved how it worked with the yellow and blue, just adding in that black. Just, I thought it was chef's kiss. Moving on into the third room, I always had in mind for this room to be some kind of office workspace. Then I kind of wanted to just make it a little bit more different than a standard office space. So I decided that maybe the dad works in the music career. Maybe he's a musician or he teaches music. So I kind of made this look as though it's his space. And I also wanted to imagine that maybe he really wants his children to be musical as well. So he comes in here and he sits in here with them, teaches them how to play the guitar or to sing. So I popped down the 2 different guitars, and then I kind of just made the computer space look as though it's not necessarily for sitting doing office work. It's for maybe recording songs or editing videos for songs, that kind of thing, editing music. I don't know loads about that, but that's what I envisioned for this space. So I placed down lots of musical items and then tried to just give the rest of the room that kind of vibe. When I was doing the living room, I placed down all of my clutter on this table, which is what I normally do. I'll grab out all of my clutter and then rearrange it, but I completely forgot to rearrange it how I wanted it to go. So we did pop back to the living room to finish off that table, and then we're going to go and move on to the garden. So we decided to give them kind of like this side yard, and I really didn't want it to be too big, because I feel as though a lot of these size houses in real life, they would have quite a long narrow back garden, but they certainly wouldn't have a massive back garden. So I wanted to make sure that that vibe fitted in. So I've just given them a fairly small side garden. And then I did decide to come in and add a few more things to the exterior, as it was just looking a little bit plain. So we've added on some guttering, some plants, and then I didn't want to necessarily decorate the garden with too much plants, as I didn't really have these in mind as gardening type people. So I just placed down some things that looked a little bit wild and kind of still matched in with the surrounding landscaping. And then I did decide on the back to add in kind of like this enclosed porch sort of area, so that they've got some protection from the rainy weather. And then this is where I placed down their barbecue. I also wanted to go in and add in a few little other kind of like tools, things that you might necessarily just have in your garden. So I placed down the hose and the little garden fork set. I sized these down one, and then I kind of imagined that maybe they was a kids set that the kids play with in the garden. And then again, I wanted to make sure that there was enough seating for them to sit and eat as a family because of the ages that I imagined the kids. And then I'm just going to come in and add some fun activities for the kids to do. I really wanted to squeeze the climbing frame in, but it felt as though it just took up too much of the garden. So then I was going to go for the little pool, but then I couldn't remember if children could use that or if it was only toddlers. So I went for got this splash pad instead, and I kind of just imagined that they've set up the garden for summer, so these things might not normally be there all year round, and they've just placed them down to enjoy the summer weather in their back garden. So they've got little barbecue set up so they can sit and eat out here, but then there's lots of fun things for the children to do as well. And then I just added in 1 or 2 little plants just to finish it off, and then that does pretty much bring us to the end of the build. I'm just going to finish up with a tiny bit of terrain painting to make it look a little bit more lived in and used, and then I'm going to take you guys into screenshots. So I really hope you all enjoyed this build. If you do, then please do give the video a thumbs up, leave me a comment below, let me know which kind of tiny homes you would like to see in the future, and I'll definitely add them to my build list. Thank you all so much for watching. Lots of love. Take care. Bye bye.